Today, our objective is to learn about the implementation of one-to-one Chromebooks at Bryan City Schools. As I said, Tom Carnes is joining us, and we're going to do a little bit of a change-up. Rather than do just like a straight presentation, we're going to do kind of an interview format. So we're kind of sitting across the table from each other, kind of podcast style, and we're going to talk about all of the different things that Bryan City Schools is doing. So without further ado, we'll get started. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those out loud or in the chat box. So our first question, Tom, would be, how did you start the process of the one-to-one initiative here at Bryan?
So initially, when I came on, we are a Mac district, so we had 100% Macs, and we were primarily a cart environment where we would have a cart per floor, per grade, per, scattered teachers would sign them out or whatnot. So they were used to our students having Mac laptops in their possession. Our teachers also have Mac laptops as their device. So one of the challenges when we started thinking about going one-to-one was what type of device we wanted to use. So at the time, we had a tech visioning committee that was comprised of teachers, administrators, and the IT staff that would meet once a month. And during that time, we had a lot of visioning committees going on. It was prior to us building our buildings here. And we would actually get subs for the teachers, and then they would come in and have these committees. So we proposed that in front of that committee, that tech committee, on whether we even should do one-to-one. The objective to that was we wanted buy-in from our teachers. We wanted our teachers to actually, not necessarily it be their idea, but we wanted their support ahead of the one-to-one initiative. We didn't want it to be something, okay, here comes something down from the administrators again. They want us to, do this, whatever the new hot topic is. So we wanted them to come to that conclusion. So we went through a format, asked questions and whatnot on do we even want to be one-to-one, which we kind of expected that they would because they were constantly fighting for the carts. So that was a pretty easy hurdle to get over. So once we got past that, do we want to be one-to-one, we actually went through a process with that committee on what products we should actually use. And so, of course, when we asked that question initially, they wanted MacBooks because that's what they were accustomed to.
Right, they're used to them.
Yeah.
No changes for them.
Right, absolutely. The only difference would be the kid would have it in his hands all the time. And to be honest with you, that was almost cost prohibitive for us, at least to do it on a large scale, at the scale we wanted it to do on. So we walked them through a process, and we started off with what is our goal? When you say you want to go one-to-one, what is our goal? What do we want to accomplish with being one-to-one? And we walked through that, and we actually listed out our goals. And then we went to the next step was we said, what must our devices, not naming the device, what must our devices do or be able to do to accomplish these goals? So just for example, they have to be able to print. They have to be able to browse the internet. They have to be able to do word processing. And write down the list, so we're matching up what our devices need to do to the goals that they actually set for the initiative. And then we started to get into the device. At this point, we just said, don't think about devices, just think outside the box. So then we said, okay, now we need to know what our devices must be able to do. What devices do we want to list to consider? And basically, we came up with the iPad, the MacBook, and the Chromebook. And so we took each device individually and we listed, okay, will an iPad meet our criteria? And what is the pros and cons to the iPad? And so we actually would match them up, and we could weigh what devices were actually matched up with their goals. And so in the end, what we ended up doing was listing pros and cons, and obviously the biggest pro to the Chromebook was cost. iPads got eliminated pretty quickly, and so it really came down to two laptop devices.
When you were originally thinking this one-to-one initiative, what grades were you looking at? Was it only certain grades, one grade, multiple grades?
We were going to start at we wanted to start at the high school level, But we also talked about in this committee starting at the 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
In the back of my mind, what I really knew, what I was really after in the back of my mind was to go after Chromebooks because I knew we could touch a larger student body at that time.
More, you could buy more for your money.
Absolutely. And we could do, you know, the whole high school as opposed to just doing 7, 8. So once we got down to just the 2 devices, yeah, I was pretty honest with them and pretty blunt and said, you know, for X amount of dollars, this is my budget for devices. So normally what we would do in the years past is we would rotate our fleet. We would buy new MacBooks, and then those MacBooks would come in and they would land at the higher grade levels. And then those MacBooks that were at the higher grade levels would then get filtered down to the middle school, and then the middle school ones would get filtered down to the elementary. Mostly because the higher grades needed more computing power, so they needed the newer devices that had more memory, more computing power. Whereas the lower grade students, they were basically browsing the internet, which doesn't require a lot processing power. So we would always pass that stuff down. So I was pretty upfront and said, you know, this is the amount of money we normally would spend rotating our fleet of devices. So if I was to take that same amount of money, we can outfit grades 7 through 12, one-to-one Chromebooks. If we decide to go with MacBooks, we're only going to go grade 7. We can do 2 grades, so it makes sense to do 7 and 8.
Okay.
And so we kind of left it up with them. Again, the whole reason for this exercise that we went through, which took several months, I mean, it was over several meetings, the whole reason for this exercise was we wanted teachers buy-in, not only their buy-in, but we wanted to be able to say, at the end of the day, when a teacher comes up and says, why are we going Chromebooks? I hate Chromebooks, nobody likes them, et cetera, we can say this is not an admin-driven initiative. This is what the tech committee, which is mostly comprised of teachers, this is the decision they came up with.
It's not me deciding for
Absolutely.
you, it's your peers.
It's your peers
right.
coming up. And and we always, through these meetings, we would always encourage that committee to be our voice. So unless if you don't go out and talk to your peers and get their opinions and let them know what we're thinking in this committee and get their input, then you're doing a disservice to your coworkers. So we would always encourage them to go out and bring back in, you know, what they hear in the break rooms, and then we would try to combat it within that meeting. Gotcha. Another thing that we did with that committee that was helped out in the long run was we actually set some policies in with that committee.
Oh, wow. So that early in the process, you looked at policies.
Absolutely. So one of the, for example, like YouTube. YouTube was big for us and it was getting kicked around because our teachers used it heavily. Our students would go home and do presentations and they would throw YouTubes in the presentations, come to school, and it would be blocked. And so it would require teachers' override for that presentation to work. So we introduced, or we proposed to this committee, okay, is it a good idea to unblock YouTube for us? Because what it comes down to, at the end of the day, if we unblock YouTube, it becomes a classroom management.
Absolutely.
And we needed them to understand that. And we needed to change their mindset that it wasn't a technology issue, but it actually comes down to a classroom management issue.
You know, a pencil can be a deadly weapon. You just put it in the wrong hands with classroom management. So, yeah, it's just another tool.
Right, absolutely. So, of course, when we said, should we unblock YouTube, they said yes immediately. And then when I said, okay, we can block YouTube and started talking about this concept of classroom management, the IT staff nor the principals never want to get a phone call that says Johnny's on YouTube. Because our response to you is going to be, well, then you need to deal with Johnny on YouTube. You either need to relocate his desk and set him beside you, turn it so that you can see his screen all the time, and, you know, just when we would list several options for them, but one of those options is not to call us and expect us to do anything. So that's it was kind of a mind shift, kind of a mind change. And the other thing that also with our administrators as well was 99% of the time when we get called about issues with technology, it really is not a technology issue. it's a behavior issue, or it's a whatever, whatever the case may be issue.
Somebody not knowing how to do something.
Yeah, and they'll be off track, and okay, so all of a sudden we want to take away their Chromebooks because they're off track. Well, it's not. That's not a technology issue. That's an issue with him not being able to stay on track. You need to be able to deal with that.
Right.
You take that Chromebook away from him, then he's going to be off track with a piece of paper and pencil. So you never really fixed his problem. So we try to get, and our principals really have changed their mindset in thinking along the line of, if this is a textbook, not a Chromebook, how would I handle it? So if a student was to, let's say, draw a dirty picture into a textbook, you wouldn't take his textbook away from him. You would deal with the issue of him drawing pictures in the textbook. So if a student is doing something on his Chromebook, the answer is not to take his Chromebook away from him. The answer is to deal with what he's doing with the Chromebook. So taking technology out of the hands of our students is not an option for our principals, and it is an extremely last resort for them. Because basically you're punishing the teacher more than the student, because now the teacher needs to come up with ulterior curriculum.
Something for them to do.
Yeah, because they're pushing out their curriculum through the classroom, and now all of a sudden they've got to do something with paper and pencil for the student that doesn't have the Chromebook anymore. So that was kind of so we kind of worked through some of that stuff right at the very beginning.
So as you started working through your plan, obviously you talked a little bit about cost. But aside from the cost of the devices, was there really any setup costs or startup costs that were associated kind of with the Chromebook initiative?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did, there's a talk going on right now out on text lists or on whether you should filter your devices when they're off campus or not. And that really wasn't a discussion for us. We were definitely going to filter our devices when they're off campus. So currently, if you're a NWACA participant, or if you go through NWACA, you get filtered through their box. But they're not. That doesn't really accommodate devices off-site very well. And so what we did was we purchased our own Lightspeed device through NWACA, and they actually house it for us. They manage it for us. They update it, and it actually sits out to their site. But what we were able to do is our students are the only ones on that device, which gives us more computing power. If you ever try to run a report on the NWACA's device, or Lightspeed, it's kind of hard to do because
so many people are using it. Lots of users.
Tons of traffic going through that. So it gives us a better response through the system to run reports, because we definitely wanted to do that with our students. And then also allowed us to set it up the way we wanted it set up. And our students are the only ones on there. So through the management council and the Chromebooks, all of our Chromebooks that get enrolled to our domain are forced to go through that Lightspeed box. So that was a cost that we occurred right up front. And then we get anywhere, depending on where we're at in our rotation, we'll purchase anywhere between 300 and 500 Chromebooks in the summer. And there is enrollment. I mean, you have to enroll them into your domain in order for you to control them. Well, there's a service when you buy a Chromebook, you can buy the white glove service, and they'll do that for you, basically. But we did a cost analysis, and we can actually hire students, which we have tech students here. We can actually hire tech students in the summer, and it's cheaper for us to use them, and then we hire them in summer, so then we have them for other projects as well. So it does take up a little bit of time to enroll all of them, and hopefully you'll have some help to do that, or you have to put a system in place to do that, because it kind of is time consuming. It can take our students anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get them all enrolled properly and get them tagged and that sort of stuff.
You talked about large numbers of Chromebooks. Like, what is the planned lifespan for a device?
Originally, I think they come rolling out with like a 3-year. When we first started into it, Google said 3-year, and then the following year they went to a 4-year, and now I've heard up to like 5 years even, depending on the particular Chromebook device itself. And there's a matrix out there that'll say how long. And when they say that it don't no longer support it, or the lifespan, basically it just stops auto updating.
Gotcha.
With Google's OS is off.
What brand are you using?
We actually, we don't get stuck with one particular brand. We actually throw it out for bid every year. One of the things that we do, there's a couple things we look for, like we want to make sure whatever brand it is has the same screen, because Chromebooks are no different than any other computer. When you take the shell off that has the branding on it, a lot of the things that are on the inside are the exact same.
Right.
And we wanted to make sure, because we repair our own products, that, like the LCD screens, for example, every one of them is the same. So like when we put it out for bid, right now we have our big fleets are Acers, Dell, and last year we had HPs. So whatever we buy this year, we'll want to make sure that it's using that same LCD screen. Gotcha. And a lot of the same parts that go between. But that's more important to us than the name, because every one of them is going to warranty it for 1 year. So we just send them back, and then everything after that we fix on. So. Okay. And then library plays a huge role for us, and so the librarians would have to come in, or we would have to work something out with them to get all of the Chromebooks enrolled into their library system. So that was something that we had to consider. We pay our librarian a little bit extra at the end of the year so that she can come in and enroll all of the Chromebooks into her system.
Awesome. The students, you guys pay for the Chromebooks, but do the students have any fees involved with the Chromebooks?
Yeah, so we, here at Bryan, we have a technology protection plan. It's $50 a year, and they pay it every year for the Chromebook. One thing that I want to caution with, if you decide to assess a fee of some sort with your Chromebooks, or at least what we did. One thing we do not label it as a fee. And therefore, we can get around the free and reduced lunch. So every student gets assessed this regardless of their free and reduced lunch status. And another thing I would caution you to do is not include the word insurance on whatever this assessment is. It just gets you into a lot of, the first year we had insurance, like we call it technology insurance or something like that. And it really got confusing for parents because they started comparing it to their homeowner's insurance, car insurance, and our program isn't really set up to mirror typical insurance. And it got confusing to the point where some people were trying to enroll their Chromebooks into their homeowner's insurance.
Gotcha.
So just to alleviate that whole confusion, we just went totally away from any word insurance as well as fees. So we just call it technology protection plan.
So what do you get for that plan?
So with that plan, first and foremost, you get to take your Chromebook off-site. Okay. So they get to take it home with them. And then that protection plan also allows them for one accidental damage repair through the course of that year. And a couple things it did not cover, like stolen or lost devices, or if a kid maliciously broke theirs, like we had a kid get mad and open it 360 degrees, and they only opened 180, so it broke the hinges. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't cover that sort of stuff. So it handles that. Probably the majority of the breaks that we have are LCD panels, and cost roughly $50 to repair that anyway.
So if a student didn't pay for the fee, they could still utilize a Chromebook while at school, they just can't take it home?
That's right. So Chromebooks is a part of the way that we do business here at Bryan City Schools, grades 6 to 12 this year. So it's not an option for students. So if they choose not to do the technology protection plan, basically they leave their Chromebook on site and they just check it in and out of the library every day. Okay. And then if something occurs, if their Chromebook gets broke, whether it be by accident or not, they'll actually have to pay to get it fixed.
Okay. Can students also bring their own devices, or do they have to use the Chromebook?
Yes, prior to one-to-one, we were a BYOD, and we continue with those policies today. So.
Okay. You're welcome. So you talked about like the students checking in and out the Chromebooks each day if they don't pay the fee, but I got to believe that a bunch of kids coming back to school, and you guys are you down to 6th grade, 6 through 12 now for the Chromebooks?
Yeah, and next year we'll go down to 4.
Okay, so 4 through 12? Wow. So how do you manage all that at the beginning of the year?
I mean, so at the beginning, our first year, what we did was we had a Chromebook rollout day. So prior to the start of school, We set aside 2 different days where students could come in to the library, pay their technology protection plan, sign their loan agreement, and then they could check out their Chromebook and take it home with them. Well, that went over so well that our high school principal wanted to implement that at a larger scale. So this year, when we moved into the new buildings, grades 6 through 12 actually has a registration day. So down in the Commons, they'll have a day, and they have different stations set up where parents can come in, they can do their paperwork, they can pay their fees, they can do all that stuff that they would normally do at the beginning of the year. And then one of the tables is for them to sign, get their loan agreement and sign it, and they can take it over and pay their $50. And then at the bottom of that agreement, there's a place they write their check number or whatnot. And then once they've done that, they give their loan agreement back to them. And then when they're finished up in the Commons, then they go up to the library, and as long as they have that signed loan agreement that's marked paid, then they can check out their Chromebook and then take it home with them. And then other than that, if that means basically they haven't paid their TPP, which means they're not going to take it home, they're going to check it in and out every day anyways. And if a student comes in, it didn't make it to registration, or at any point during the year, they decide that they want to pay that and take it so they can take it off campus, which is the big factor why most of them want to. They can bring their loan agreement down to the office, whatever office they're part of, and the office then does the same thing, in essence, takes their money, marks their agreement. They take that agreement up to the library can check it out, and then set the checkout date for the end of the year as opposed to that day.
So the kids that don't pay the fee are checking their Chromebooks out every day. Are they still assigned a specific Chromebook?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So it's not just some random one that might already be broken. They have one that's theirs.
Yep, absolutely. We want to try to give them ownership, which we allow our students to set their own wallpaper and that sort of stuff. Put their own covers on if they want. So they take some ownership to that Chromebook. So basically, if they pop a key off, if they don't want to get it paid to get fixed, then you do without a key all year. I mean, it's your device, so you destroy it, that's the one you're going to be living with, not for just this year, but for the next 4 years.
So it's not a new device every year. It's going to be as
that device follows them from year to year, as long as we have that device in our fleet.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So how about turning in at the end of the year? Because I'm assuming you need to do refreshes and things like that.
Yeah. So at the end of the year, last year what we did, we was in, well, we'll probably do the same thing here. So grades 6 through 8 is a little bit different because, you know, they're in classrooms and they follow each other. They're more structured. So we set up a time. We had a schedule on our calendar. We set up a predetermined time where students were told we're going to collect your Chromebooks at this particular day or given day. And then the IT staff would actually go into that classroom and we would inspect them. And basically what would happen is they would open them up. We'd make sure all the keys are on there, and we'd make sure their LCD panel's not cracked. Those are the 2 big things. And make sure they had their power supply. And if there was something wrong with it or they didn't have their power supply, we actually noted that on this spreadsheet that we had. We noted what was broke or what was missing, and we had the students sign it. Because what we didn't want to do is that when they got their same device back the next year and say, hey, my screen's broke, and it wasn't broke when I turned it in last year, then we're going to fix it.
Right.
But we can pull a spreadsheet up if the student said, hey, I'm missing a key, and we'll say, well, you was missing that key last year, so you can either pay to get it fixed or you live without that key that you popped off. So we wanted to know prior to them, if they were just blindly turning in, then they could say, you know, that was working when I turned it in type of thing. So that's what we did with up to 8. So seniors were pretty easy to handle as well because we just had them turn them in on their last day at school. And what makes them easy was they were still coming back for rehearsed graduation rehearsals. So if the library flagged them like you didn't turn your Chromebook in, we could still get a hold of them and not let them walk the stage unless they turned their Chromebooks.
Right.
Where it really gets tricky, at least for us, was grades 9 through 11 because a lot of their classes were dependent on having their Chromebook for their exams. They couldn't turn their Chromebooks in until their last hour or after they were done. Well, which they were instructed to do, but let's say a kid doesn't turn it in, that's his last hour. He's done. He's gone. As soon as he walks out these doors, we have no way of getting a hold of it. Now he's got his Chromebook at home. And
that's a problem.
Yeah, you don't know how to get a hold of him. So we basically, in that particular scenario, we kicked out an invoice to them, charging them the price of the Chromebook. One of the things we did that were really worked out for us as well was at the very end of the year, you can force wallpaper on Chromebooks, and we forced wallpaper to a different wallpaper for the 6 through 8 than obviously the 9 through 12 because we had different turn-in rules. But we spelled out to them what days their Chromebooks were to be turned in and what the costs were going to be had they not turned their Chromebooks in. And so for the last 2 weeks of school, this was their wallpaper. So it was a constant reminder to them so that when we bill them or when we get with them at the end of the year, the parents can't say, well, I didn't know I had to turn in the power supply. And we'll say, well, your students knew about it for 2 weeks because it's been their wallpaper for 2 weeks. So that whether they choose not to tell you or not, an issue for you, not for us.
You talked about power supply. What are the rules with the power supply at the school? I mean, I imagine that having 20 kids in a classroom trying to get a power outlet might be a challenge.
So one of our policies that we set right up from the start was our students must bring their Chromebooks in fully charged every day, and that their power supplies are not allowed on campus.
Okay.
And that's the simple policy that we just set across the board. Now, I'll tell you that there are students who do bring their power supplies in, and there are teachers that let students plug their power supplies in. And again, that's a classroom management issue for them, whether they choose to do that or not. But where the safeguard is for us, at the end of the year, when a student goes to turn his Chromebook and power supply in, the student says, well, Johnny stole my power supply, I can say, well, your power supply never should have been at school for Johnny to steal it, so you still owe me a power supply. And so it's just kind of a safety net for us, and that we don't allow them whether they bring them or not. We don't kick them out of school, or I'm not really a stickler if they bring them. I just look at them and say, you know what, you lose that here at school, you're still going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, you're in trouble. So that leads us into the next question I had, which is, what policies have you kind of adopted here at Bryan that you think would be useful? Because I know some of the districts that are on our webinar today are considering one-to-one or things like that. And so what kind of policies do you need to have?
Yeah, so again, like I said, the no power supplies at school, that I think has been a really good policy for us. One of the things that we ran across, and I think a lot of districts will run across as well, is you'll get a parent, for whatever reason, want to opt out of our one-to-one program. I'm not going to pay the TPP. I don't want my student to have a Chromebook at home, and I don't want him to have a Chromebook at school. And so we adopted a policy at the administrative level, and have actually had conversations with parents that says you can opt out of the TPP if you want. That's your option, and you can opt out on whether your students takes the Chromebook home or not. We do have a few students that pay the TPP but don't take them home, and that's their option.
Okay.
One thing you cannot opt out of is you cannot tell me that I can't give your kid a Chromebook when he comes into school, because that's the way that we do business. That's the way we educate kids. Is when they come in here, we give them a Chromebook because of all the resources that we use that require them. We look at it no different than you would never allow a teacher to come in to go to your math teacher and say, I do not like this algebra book, you got to use a different algebra book.
Gotcha.
You wouldn't even consider that.
Absolutely.
So we don't consider teachers telling us that they want to opt out of our one-to-one program. You can do what you want at home, but you can't tell us what to do once your student's here. And if you don't like the way we educate your child, then you're welcome to open enroll into a district that do one.
Okay.
So that really, that'll save you, I think, a lot of trouble. And again, because who you're really penalizing in that scenario is the teachers, who has to come up with an,
alternative lessons.
For students that are not, on Chromebook. Our policy was with apps. Chromebooks have apps. Our policy was we disallowed all apps, and then the teachers can request them as they find them. If you take a Chrome browser on any device whatsoever, log into a Chrome browser, then it's in essence the same as a Chromebook. So teachers can go out and test extensions and apps. And if they have an app that they like, that they want to incorporate into their plan or their lessons, then they just let us know, and then we force that app to all the Chromebooks. So we take the stance of we block everything and allow it as teachers request.
I know other schools have tried the open app thing, and then they've closed it up pretty quickly.
Yeah. It gets distracting enough for students just being able to go to the internet and find games and whatnot, let alone having little apps running. It really gets distracting for them. Gets too tempting. Another policy is we don't allow printing from the Chromebooks. We did a little bit when we were on carts. We did the printing from the Chromebooks, but when we went to the one-on-one environment, we opted not to do that. Instead, what we have is 4 printing stations that are in the library, and they're iMacs with Chrome browsers on them, so if a student wants to print something, they go to the library, they log in to their account, and then they have USB attached printers to them, and that's how they print their things. Okay. And that was kind of one of the things that we pushed through that committee as well at the beginning of the year. The whole concept was if we're going to put in one-to-one devices and expect our teachers to use LMS, Google Classroom, or whatever the case may be, then why are we still printing out stuff? Let's just go paperless as much as possible. And where you have to print something, then, like they're doing scholarships right now, the seniors are, so they needed to print their scholarships out. So we still give them a printing avenue, but we just don't make it available to every laptop.
Have teachers been pretty receptive to the ability to not printing?
Yeah, actually, it's really kind of forced their hands to get into Google Drive and Google Classroom because they don't, otherwise they're sending their whole class down to the library at any time to print out something. Yeah, and that gets disruptive for them as well. We also come up with a policy at the onset on what happens if a student does not turn in his Chromebook when he's doesn't pay his TPP, and we'll also, let's say he forgets his Chromebook at home, and he has to go to the library and get a loaner, or he brings it in not charged, so he's got to go get a loaner. And we found at the beginning kids were getting loaners all the time, and it was just willy-nilly. I forgot my Chromebook at home. It's no big deal. I just go down to the library and get a loaner. So that got to the point where we were running out of loaners, laptops.
Okay.
So what we did is implement this policy that basically says, I forget what the time is, like if you require a loaner 3 times within 1 quarter, then you get a lunch detention. Or if you don't check your Chromebook back into the library at the end of the day when you don't have the TPP paid, then you get a lunch detention. And so we push 2 tabs through our admin console, and so that when a student logs in their Chromebook, it automatically puts 2 tabs up in their browser. First tab is their inbox, mail.google.com, and the second tab is the screen that you're seeing right now. It's basically just a web page we designed that has those technology violations spelled out in front of them in yellow, as well as provides them links for their student handbooks, the BYOD policy, different links that we want to be able to say to the students and or parents, your student has access to those 24/7. Anytime they open their Chromebook, they should be seeing, or have access to their student handbook. Or they know what those policies are if they know how to read, because they're put in front of them every time they come into their Chromebook, so that we can enforce different rules and them not be able to say, well, I didn't know anything about it. So this is the exact same tab or exact same page that they would also go in to sign into the filter system. So our filter system basically only allows like 2 or 3 web pages through it by default. It allows like mail.google.com, and it allows this Bears Den website. If they try to go to any other website, including drive.google.com, it will redirect them back to a blocked page.
Okay.
So what it does is it forces our students to log into the Lightspeed box, because until they actually log into the filter box, we can see internet traffic, but we don't know whose traffic it is. Once they log into it, now all of a sudden their name's attached to all their traffic. So basically what we do was we block them from doing anything until they log in to the Lightspeed, and then once they log in, then they get their typical filter set, and then that way their name is associated with all their internet.
I know some of the schools I've seen do where they log into their Chromebook and then the very next screen is the filter page. So, have you, without getting into general or specifics, have you had a lot of issues with kids using the Chromebook, or have they been pretty responsible with things?
Oh, pretty. Again, I think when we had a mixture, because when we were testing it out, we actually had a mixture of Chromebooks and MacBooks, and if you put those two in front of a student at that time, they would all walk and get a MacBook until the MacBooks were gone, and then they would grab Chromebooks. But that's mostly because that's what they were familiar with. Right. If you was to look at what they were doing, there wasn't anything they were doing on a MacBook that they couldn't have done with the Chromebook. So they quickly adapt. Kids are, adaptive. They, adjust fairly easy, more so than adults, and they've adapted to them fairly well. And we hear. At the beginning, we heard a lot of complaints about them not liking it. We hear none anymore.
And they're being pretty responsible because they know they're being filtered.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. And we make it well. I talked to a student today. I make it known. Not only do we filter them, I always take it a step further, too, as a life lesson. There's nothing you ever do on the Internet that somebody doesn't log and somebody doesn't have access to. You can mark your stuff private, only between you and friends, whatever the case may be. But if it's on the Internet, it's being logged somewhere, and someone else has access to it. So don't ever think that we can't see what you're doing, and we can't pull up what you're doing.
I assume you're not allowing incognito mode and things like that.
Correct. We disallow incognito. That's correct.
How about sharing? How does the sharing work? Are you guys set up to share just in your district, or do you allow students to share outside? Is email only within your district, or is it open wide?
Yeah, our email's open wide. Sharing for our students is for BryanSchools.net only, or any trusted. Like we have St. Pat's is our parochial school in town, and they also have Chromebooks. And we also do St. Pat's kids come over and take some classes here. So we have a trusted domain with them, so they can share to St. Pat's students. Invite our teachers through Classroom can share with those students as well. But as a whole, we block them from sharing outside, but our staff, who's in a different OU, they can share outside. Our students cannot. Our students cannot chat. We have chat turned off for our students as well. Our teachers can chat. Our tech team can chat.
So previously you mentioned the tech team just a minute ago, and then the library. So they have to have a big role in this. So what role do they have? You said all the Chromebooks get checked out through the library.
Yeah, so our library played a huge role in our whole one-to-one initiative, mostly in that they do all of our inventorying of our Chromebooks, and they track all of our Chromebooks. They track all of our Chromebook offenses. So when a Chromebook comes into our district, they get 3 labels. They get the student, their student name is a label, and the barcode is their student ID. They get the Bryan City Schools asset tag with the barcode for that tag number, and then they also get CRC's barcode, just as if it was a library book.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't aware of this. That the way it's set up right now, CRC can actually track your Chromebooks for you. So if you use, the stuff that Nowaka through CRC, you can do that. And actually, Kim was telling me today that there's actually now a script that makes importing the Chromebooks a little easier, whereas before I know you guys blazed some new ground with this.
But yeah, it was, like I said, our librarians were involved and had a little extra time at the beginning of the year just to get all these Chromebooks enrolled. So once they all get enrolled in there, whether, so they're all pre-labeled with the students, like you said, they're assigned to a particular student. So our students would come in and get their Chromebooks, whether they're taking them out for the whole year or checking them out for the day. They grab their predetermined Chromebook and they just walk up, and the librarians literally scan them as if they're scanning out a book. And then so at any given time, we can tell how many Chromebooks are checked out, or what all the tracking that the librarians are able to do with their books, they now do with our Chromebooks. And so if they need a loaner, if the students have a problem, they take them to the library. The library is the first place our students go if they have an issue with their Chromebook. They go to the library. If the librarian can't handle it, they send it over to our tech team. We actually have a course that students can take for our tech team, and we have the luxury, when we designed this building, we actually have, our students have a place that actually hangs off of the library. It's their own workroom, if you will.
Okay.
And it has a half door that leads into the library. So they can actually open the top half of that door, so it's like a counter, so that faces into the library. So our students will come in, they'll go to the librarian quickly sends them over to our tech team, and they'll belly up to that door, and our tech students will either tell them to fix it right there as they're standing there if it's a quick fix, or they'll tell them you need to go get a loaner. So then the students will turn around and go back to the librarian, who will then has a stack of loaners available to them. They'll actually check out a loaner to that student, and then our tech team takes over from there. Like I said,
do they do the repairs?
Yeah, absolutely. So our tech team does all of our in-house repairs. So for the first year that our Chromebooks, we send them all in for warranty. And then our students know that, like this year, it was HP's. If an HP comes to they still log it into their system. They still track it but then it comes down to us and we just send it out. They don't take any screws out of an HP unless it's a broken LCD panel, which is out of warranty or is not a warranty item, and then they'll fix them because it's the same panel as all the other Chromebooks, which is fairly easy. But they handle 100% of our repairs. So it was kind of neat. At the beginning of the year, we pulled the tech team in, and I give them because we run that tech team, that whole, like it's a shop, so gives them some real life experience. So they have to track where the Chromebook comes in, what the initial problem was, who worked on it, what kind of parts they put in it, what's your part inventory, and then we even take it even another step further. In some of their comments, a particular field that they comment on, we actually pull that comment into the invoice that we send home to the parents. So I use the same spreadsheet to go through when they sign a part, then I'll put a price tag to that, and we'll run AutoCrat against that sheet, and it'll create these invoices that pulls in the data off the spreadsheet that they designed that will tell the parent what was wrong with the device, what we replaced with the device, and how much the device cost, and any comments that the technician, quote unquote, had. And so that then they get sent home.
Wow.
And so at the beginning of the year, I introduced this problem to the students. I said we need a spreadsheet that needs to be able to track inventory, that needs to be able to track what a student says. One of the lessons that we teach our students in troubleshooting is that the user always lies. Never believe anything they say. So they have a column in there that says this is what the student says what's wrong with it, and the very next column is a technician who has actually pulled it off the shelf to work on it, and then his comment will be what's actually wrong with it.
That's great that the tech team can do all that work.
So what's really cool, they designed this spreadsheet. It's out of Google Sheets that is I bet you it has 6 hidden tabs on it. One of the tabs is I give them a list of all of our students, 6 to 12, in one column, and that student's student ID in another column. And then we hid that tab. So they'll take the Chromebook that's hooked up to an iMac in their tech room, and they'll scan it in, that student's name, and it'll populate with that student ID, it'll populate that student's name. Then they have, just like you would have at Walmart or something, they have 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper with little barcodes for different parts and different technicians. So a technician can literally, they'll scan in the Chromebook, the spreadsheet, he'll scan in his name or use his student ID or punch in his number. It'll automatically populate his name. Any parts that they use, they'll grab that 8.5 by 11, they'll scan that particular part, and not only does it populate it in the spreadsheet, but then it also on a hidden tab, it actually depletes it out of their inventory. And then they have another tab that they actually put inventory in. They'll scan in, like I just give them a box of HP parts they wanted to start stocking up their HP shelf. So I give them some parts today. So now they're scanning in those parts in a hidden tab that's automatically gets put into that so that they can start depleting it, so that they know when their inventory is low. And then they have a hidden tab for notes, and the spreadsheet is really impressive. They did a really nice job. So they kind of run it like a business, like a service business.
How are those kids selected?
They'll actually, it's an elective class, so they'll actually sign up for it, you know, like some have signed up for it already. And then the guidance counselors will come to me, and we'll talk about the students, you know, if it's a good fit for the student, if he's looking to get out of study hall or, you know, whatever. And then we run it kind of like an extracurricular. So I tell our students, we monitor your grades, and you fall in the same as like an athlete. So your grade point average has to be whatever it has to be, and if your grades are low, then we're going to kick you back to a study hall, because apparently you need a study hall more importantly than you. Right. So our kids, they'll come in and they'll just go to that tech room, and they'll just sit in there. And if they don't have any jobs to do, they just treat it as a study hall. Or if they have Chromebooks coming across, then they'll work on Chromebooks. Or if I have a problem in a teacher's room that I need them to help, I'll email them or I'll chat them, and I'll send them down to a classroom to work a problem.
I have a couple of questions. I'm going to open up to questions for everybody else, but two things have prompted me. First is, how many extra Chromebooks do you have? I mean, if you have a student that forgets it at home, you have to have a surplus. What do you budget for?
Yeah, we usually try to. It's not quite 10%, but I think, yeah, it's probably close to 10%. So, like, if we order 300 of them this year, we'll probably order like 25 extras. Okay. For loaners and for, like when one's in for repair or if a kid forgets it, whatever. At the beginning of the year, we go through a lot of loaners. It seems like kids are forgetting them or whatnot until they get into the groove. But then after the year goes, like now, we're basically our loaners only get used for if they're in for repair. Kids get tired of going to lunch detention because they forget them, so they start remembering. Really quickly. Right.
Then the other question I had before we get into the open questions for everybody is, is there any professional development given the students on how to use Google, how to do some of that stuff?
Yeah, and in that one web page that we throw up to them all the time that's on the sideboard, there's some tutorials and some how-tos that they have access to through there. But the first year that we did the Chromebooks, we actually went into every ELA class, because every student has English. So we actually went into every class at the beginning of the year, showed them made sure they know how to log in, make sure they know how to connect to the Wi-Fi at home, make sure they know how to go offline with their docs and their emails in the event that they don't have internet at home. And a couple other items. So we did that and helped them through that. But this year we didn't do it so much because our students kind of picked up on it fairly quick. However, we do touch on a few things with I can't remember what it's called, where you have to go in and teach every student about inappropriate things and based on for your E-rate funding. That whatever that whole thing's called. So we do get in front of every student. It's just not as early in the year as what it was that first year we were doing it. We had like assemblies for certain grade levels and tried to get them all within that first week.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to open the floor up to questions for Tom now. You can either send a question in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I'm hoping this will work. The way we've got our audio set up today, I'm not sure, but go ahead and either unmute or ask any questions that you want in the chat. I do see a comment from Keith. Keith says that Google has changed the end of life to auto update policy, and some of them are up to 6.5 years now.
Yeah.
So there you go. So they're not just a throwaway kind of device anymore. And he did provide a link which I can send out to people that want to see that. But feel free to unmute or type any questions into the chat box, and we'll be glad to answer them for you at this point. I think a lot of people are just listening and learning from you, Tom, soaking up that knowledge.
Tom, I have a question.
Sherry has opened up. Sherry?
Can you hear me?
Let me see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Hang on one second, Sherry. I got to turn myself up a little bit here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Tom, are you using any type of monitoring software for the teachers to be able to monitor the student screens in their classrooms?
Okay, Sherry wants to know, Tom can't hear, so I'm going to relay. Sherry wants to know, are you guys, teachers, using any type of monitoring software so the teachers can see the screens of the students in the classroom?
No, we currently are not. Yeah, we've looked at, when we first started looking into it, the only services that were available were kind of a big deal for us because in the Apple world, we have remote desktops.
Right.
Teachers did have that ability. So again, we just tried to, whenever that comes up in conversation with teachers, we just try to bring it back into the classroom management thing. So we just say, you know, if you want to see what, because our classrooms here are extremely mobile, real flexible by design. And so we'll just tell the teachers, if you're concerned about your students, when you get ready to go to internet, when you're sitting at your desk, just have everyone turn their desk around so their back's facing you, so they can't see when you're looking at them, but you can always look up and see what their screens are. So we just kind of give them some direction on how to manage their classroom to help alleviate that fear.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Anybody else have a question? Feel free. I think I've got it set up on our computers now where we both can hear you, so feel free to unmute and ask a question. I will ask a brief, quick question about the new building and how the new building and then the other renovated building, how that has been as part of that with the Chromebooks. Has it been a lot easier, more challenging?
Well, it's been extremely easier on our library because last year, our one-to-one initiative was spread across 2 different buildings, so our library had to, keep track of stuff in 2 different places. And this year, it's all in one building, 6 to 12. So our librarians kind of enjoyed that. I mean, they had the tech kids at their disposal all the time, where last year our middle school kids, teachers didn't have our tech team there and that sort of thing. But from a network standpoint, obviously, this new building's been a lifesaver for us because it gets built based on the OFCC manual, which is Wi-Fi in every classroom, and the network is, bandwidth is 10G, and it handles all that. Whereas in our older buildings, we were trying to retrofit older buildings to accommodate 9,000 devices online at one time. It's kind of challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Kirsten wants to know, what's the battery situation as the Chromebooks get older? Do you have issues with batteries?
We have not yet. The only issues that's come down from our tech team as far as batteries goes is if the battery just doesn't work at all. Either it works or it doesn't work. I have yet, we're only a couple years into it, but I have yet to hear anyone complain about their battery not making it all day.
Hopefully that helps, Kirsten. Anybody else that wants to ask a question, you can certainly type a question in, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question audio. I see Kirsten is unmuted, so I'm going to see if she can hear us. We can hear her.
Yeah, I have another question. Did you guys don't provide covers for your Chromebooks, or you do?
We do not.
Okay.
That was a discussion that we had. I actually had it budgeted our first year, and so we ran it through the committee and talked about it, and we actually pulled it out. It saved us like $30,000.
Right.
And what we wanted to, again, was try to do is give our students some ownership. So we tell them that they can put their own covers on there as long as they're not stickers that can't be removed at the end of the year. So some kids sticker there, or some kids will put covers on theirs. And we found that when we ordered the Dell devices, or basically any Chromebook you order now, I think, are pretty much the rugged style, quote unquote, to have the mil spec. And they're pretty tough, pretty rugged. They have rubber bumpers built right in them. They'll handle a lot of abuse. The only thing they won't handle is, cracked screens, LCDs. There's very few covers, unless you spend a lot of money, that's going to fix that problem. So a cover, to me, a cover doesn't really save you anything. It just makes every Chromebook look identical. And so they're really hard to keep apart. That covers up our barcodes that we want to use for scanning into the library. It kind of created more problems than what we think it was going to solve. So we do not cover them.
I have another question regarding the barcodes. Like on our iPads, ours actually wear off.
The barcodes. So what we do is we do a we put the regular label on there, and then the library has a clear coat barcode or clear coat label that they were putting on the edges of their books. We actually put that over the top of our labels. So our labels, the paper's not exposed. The clear label goes over the top of it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Today. Anybody else has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask us directly. We now can hear you. Or you can type in the chat if you don't want to unmute and ask questions. I think a lot of people are interested in this topic, and, you know, it's just something I think I heard that in our 4-county area, there's one school that's not Google right now, and that's it in the 4-county area that we serve, at least some. So, and I know a lot of them are going to Chromebooks and, you know, making it a, you know, kind of a cost-effective device. What kind of things do you see coming down the pike that you guys are going to be doing? You know, you talked about bringing it down. Do you think someday you're going to get all the way down to kindergarten?
Yeah, so next year we've actually put in our budget, which hasn't been approved, but we're proposing that we take our one-to-one initiative down to the 4th grade next year. And now our 4th and 5th graders won't take them off-site; they'll just be in their classroom. So, like I mentioned earlier, our Chromebook fleet would normally go from the top down. So we would have MacBook carts all the way down to the kindergarten level. It wouldn't be as many that, you know, the middle school it was probably a 1 to 2, but by the time you get down to, you know, the lower grades, it was probably a 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. So we still had devices down there. So now the question is, what do we do with those devices, because they're not getting populated? We're not pushing anything down to them. So we actually envisioned our 5-year plan when we started this was we would actually start working Chromebooks into the lower grades as well, which kind of made sense. Our students, we are a gap school as well, and we've been for a long time, which is another positive why we went to Chromebooks. And so our students' first exposure is to log into their Gmail, so at the 3rd grade level. So pushing Chromebooks all the way down there just makes sense. So if we go, basically the only thing we're doing at the lower grades at 4 and 5, which would have Chromebooks anyways, get pushed down to them, we're just making it a one-to-one environment for them as opposed to a 1 to 2. Gotcha. And then same as our lower grades, we'll just keep, as those MacBooks wear out, we'll just replace them with Chromebooks.
Any other questions for Tom? Feel free to unmute your microphone and talk, or you can type in the chat. I do know, I was reading somewhere that the biggest, you said about the LCD screen being the thing that's kind of the hardest, the thing that's the worst about those is closing a headphone in. So the kids always use the headphones, so if you close an earbud in it, that's one thing that makes it break. That's one of the biggest things. Apple said it, and then I saw it on a Chromebook list too, that don't have your kids have the headphones, you know, inside when they shut the lid. That's the problem. So any last questions? If not, we'll get wrapping up because we are past 4:30, but that's okay. We'll stay here as people have questions. Tom, do you have any final thoughts as we wrap things up?
So another huge cost savings at the beginning. So we started going, you know, putting a device in our students' hands. We're starting, you know, to get into the cloud. We're pushing online, paperless. And so I kind of stumbled across this because I normally wouldn't be associated with this particular line item in a budget, but for some reason I stumbled across our handbooks. So normally we would print out a handbook for every student that had the agenda,
like their planner.
Yeah, their planner. Yeah, we print them out, and we were spending anywhere from, I forget, it's like $7,000 to $9,000 high school to print all these agendas. And, you know, there would be a box of them left at the end of the year to sit in the conference room. So, and I thought, well, if every student has a device in their hand, and we already force them a web page all the time, we can force things to them all the time, why are we printing all these student handbooks and these agendas? And so one of those side links on that one page that we push out to them actually has a link to their student handbook, which is online. So we did away with parental consent for the AUP, where they have to sign, you know, a lot of them were signing off that, you know, we agree to the acceptable use policy and the student handbook. We took this acceptable use policy and actually put it in our student handbook, and then put our student handbook online and then threw it into that page so the kids have access to it all the time, which they don't access it, but at least we can tell the parents they have
it if you need it.
Yeah, it's up in front of them all the time. So we treat our AUP no different than any other policies that the school set. So there's a school policy, for example, that says, you know, we're a no smoking campus. You can't smoke on the campus. You can't, you know, so we don't have our parents sign off on that. We don't have our parents say, yeah, I consent to you a no smoking campus for my student. Or what, you know, whatever the policy is. So why do we trade it? Why do we do our AUP differently? Why do we make them sign off on that? Let's just put it in the student handbook. They sign off on the student handbook and they agree to that student handbook and be done with it. Just one less signature we had to gather. And so we stopped printing those agenda planners. One of the things that the teachers liked to do with those agenda planners is they had a calendar in there that they could jot in their homework, blah, blah, blah. And so during our professional development, we made sure we offered a lot of classes and promoted it that, okay, your students now in GAF have access to calendar. And back then, the classroom didn't push the calendar like it does now.
Yeah.
But we would actually teach your students how to use their calendar that they have available. Why do we have to print out a calendar for them to carry around when they can just go on?
And so it's a cost savings for the district.
So it was a huge cost savings for us. Another thing that we did with this TPP, so we had some teachers come to us at the beginning and say, hey, you know, Johnny and Sally are really good kids. They're in hardship. They could take advantage of taking their Chromebook home, but they're just not going to be able to afford the $50. So the very first year, we would take those parents offline and say, hey, you know what, if you want to pay a little bit here, a little bit there, we'll let your students pretend like you paid it all, and they wouldn't know any difference. I would advise against that because we had a 100% failure rate on people finishing paying that. So they would start off with good intentions and give us $10, and then it'd be the last $10 you ever see. Right. So, so then we still had the problem with good students that just couldn't take it home. So we came up with this one-to-one scholarship program that based on a teacher's application or recommendation that says, you know, I believe this is a good student. I believe this student would benefit academically by taking his Chromebook home, but there's no way that they're going to be able to afford it. So we have some money that's given to us through different outside sources that donated money, and that we put into a pool of, I think it was like $2,000 this year. So we have a $2,000 pool that, if based on a teacher's recommendation that a student could take advantage of this, we will send home a loan agreement with that student, and as long as the parents will sign the loan agreement and send it back to us, then the scholarship pays their $50.
That's nice.
Yeah, so we don't advertise that because we don't want to get into, not to stereotype people, we don't want all the free and reduced people come slamming in and saying, I just want something else free. And of course the students are always going to think they want it or need it just because they can play their games at home now, not just at school. Right. So we really wanted it to be based on academics, and so there's like 5 things that the student has, 5 criteria that they have to meet to qualify for the scholarship. But the biggest criteria is teacher recommendation. So the teacher actually makes the application for the student, and it's the teacher's recommendations that we basically fall back on.
And they're going to know what students.
Yeah, and our library tracks that for us as well, and tracks the money. We create a spreadsheet with how much is in the pool. They assign students to that. They send the agreements home. If it comes back signed, then they adjust, you know, that the kid accepted it, takes money out of that pool in the spreadsheet, and shows how much is available, how many scholarships they can still offer. So then the only difference is that instead of that student checking it out with the end date being the end of the day, they check it out with the end date being the end of the day.
Gotcha. Well, Tom, I really appreciate the time that you've given us today, but also the effort you guys put in. I mean, as a parent with kids in the district, I mean, I'm really impressed with, you know, the service my son has as far as with his Chromebook and things like that. So, I mean, you guys do a really good job, and this is a good model that people should follow.
Yeah, well, good. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to put up on the screen once again as we're here to wrap up that we are here to help you out. I do have my direct line and my email up there. Tom's number's up there as well, and email. So please feel free to give us a call, and you know, we can answer any questions we can have. Of course, NOACA is able to help as you're thinking about going one-to-one. We do have some services where we can help you figure out how many devices you need and help you get those as well. And so feel free to give us a call, and we can put you in the right direction. I will throw a slide up here on the screen, a couple of quick announcements. We do have the presentation available, so there is a copy of this presentation out there. If you're interested, feel free to use that link there. And then, of course, get involved with our Google Educators group. There's a link there for that as well. And then our Tuesday Tech Tips email will promote again as well. So if you've attended this webinar live, you're able to get CEU credit for it. After about tomorrow morning, you'll get an email kicked out to you that has the evaluation. If you fill the evaluation out and submit it with your name and email address, we will send out a certificate immediately via email, and you'll be able to get some CEU credit for doing this as well. And again, Tom, I really appreciate all the help. And we'll stick around for a minute or two if you have any questions. And otherwise, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sherry.